The coffee pot was still in her hand when she set the key down, small, brass, tarnished at the teeth from 8 years in a cedar box. Preston Whitfield looked at it the way a man looks at a snake on his porch step, not moving, barely breathing, waiting for it to prove it's real. "Where did you get that?" he said. Not a question. His voice had already left the room. Naomi didn't answer right away. She topped off his coffee first, steady hand, steam curling between them. "You'll want to sit back down, Mr. Whitfield," she said. "This is going to take a minute." His business partner, a lean man in a grey suit 2 sizes too expensive for a diner off Route 340, laughed, short, nervous. "Preston, what is this? You know her?" Preston didn't answer him. He was still staring at the key like it might vanish if he blinked. 3 days before she set that key on the counter, she'd already made up her mind, Naomi said quietly, wiping her hands on her apron, slow. "I let a lot go, Mr. Whitfield. This I won't." None of them knew that morning who was pouring their coffee. Bird-in-hand Pennsylvania didn't have much of a rush hour. The Dutch kettle opened at 5:30, and by 6 the regulars were already arguing about corn prices over eggs and scrapple. Naomi Fisher had worked the counter there for 2 years, ever since she came back. She was 27, quiet in the way that made people underestimate her, which she'd learned was useful more often than not. She wore the same plain grey dress and white cap as her sisters and her cousins, and she poured coffee like she'd never done anything else in her life. Most days, that felt true enough. Most days, she didn't think about Philadelphia at all, except when someone paid with a card that had a certain kind of bank logo on it, or when a customer mentioned a number, a dollar figure casually, like it was nothing, and her mind did the math before she told it to stop. Old habits didn't leave. They just got quiet. 2 coffees black, table by the window. Ruth, the other waitress, dropped the ticket without looking up. "Fancy ones, not from around here." Naomi glanced over. 2 men in the corner booth, laptops open, ties loosened, like they'd already had a long morning. One of them was maybe 30, expensive haircut, the kind of watch that cost more than her uncle's tractor. The other was older, grey at the temples, a leather folio under his arm. She poured the coffee, set it down without a word. "So the appraisal comes in low. We lean on the zoning board. And by spring the whole ridge is ours for 1/3 of what it's worth," the older man was saying. "These people don't fight. They don't sue. They just move. My father built a career on knowing when to push," the younger one said. "I can push." Naomi's hand didn't shake, but something in her chest went very still. Whitfield. She'd heard the name twice now, once when he introduced himself to the diner owner, once just now. It wasn't a common name, not around here. She walked back to the counter and didn't look at the corner booth again. Not yet. Eli Fisher, her uncle, ran 40 acres 2 miles up the ridge road. Dairy cows, a stand of walnut trees older than the county courthouse, a house his grandfather built board by board. He came into the diner at 10, still in his work coat, and Naomi saw the tightness in his jaw before he even sat down. "They came to the farm," he said low. 2 of them, English. He didn't touch his coffee. "One of them said the state might take the land for the new data road anyway. Said I'd get nothing if I waited. Said take the offer now while it's generous." "Was his name Whitfield?" Eli looked up, surprised. "The young one. How did you know that?" Naomi wiped down a spot on the counter that didn't need wiping. "Lucky guess." It wasn't luck. It was the sound of her stomach dropping when a name from a different life walked back into this one, uninvited, wearing a $2,000 coat. She hadn't always been Naomi the waitress. 9 years ago she'd been Naomi King. She'd taken her mother's maiden name for work back when she still worked in Philadelphia, back when she carried a leather folio of her own and sat across desks from men who talked about other people's land like it was a line item. She'd left the community at 19, Rumspringa turned into 4 years of college, an accounting degree, and a junior analyst job at a boutique investment firm, Whitfield and Marsh Capital. She was good at numbers. Numbers didn't lie to her, and for a while that felt like enough. Arthur Whitfield had hired her himself. Grey-haired, patient, the kind of boss who remembered his employees' mothers' names. He built that firm from nothing over 30 years. His partner, Dale Marsh, was smoother, better at the golf course, worse, Naomi came to learn. At almost everything else, she was the one who found it, deep in a client-trust reconciliation nobody else wanted to run. A gap. Small at first, then not small. $14 million. Moved in pieces too careful to be an accident. She brought it to Arthur first. He went pale, the same way his son would go pale in a diner booth years later. He asked her to be sure. She was sure. Then the lawyers got involved. Not Arthur's lawyers, Marsh's. And somehow, within a week, the story that reached the regulators wasn't about a partner quietly draining client funds. It was about founder negligence, weak oversight. Arthur's name on every filing, Arthur's signature on every account. Arthur, who trusted the wrong man for 30 years and never once checked the ledgers himself. Naomi wrote a report. 11 pages, every transaction traced, every date lined up. She handed it to compliance. It disappeared into a file that never reached the regulators. She was told, gently, in a glass conference room, that pursuing it further would not be good for her career, or for the firm's ability to keep paying her. She signed the papers they put in front of her. She kept one copy of everything because some habits from a plain upbringing didn't leave either. You don't destroy the truth just because someone tells you it's inconvenient. Arthur Whitfield resigned within the month. The papers called it health reasons. He had a heart attack 8 months later and never came back to work a day in his life. Naomi quit 2 weeks after that. She packed one bag, put a small tin box in the bottom of it, and came home to Lancaster County to ask her father's forgiveness for 4 years of silence. She'd been Amish again for 3 years now. She meant to stay that way. She had not meant to see the name Whitfield walk into her diner asking for 2 coffees black. By the end of that week, Preston Whitfield had stopped being subtle. He came back alone, no Marsh, just him and a folder of papers he laid out on Eli's kitchen table, like a man dealing cards he already knew would win. Naomi wasn't supposed to be there. She'd come to bring her aunt a jar of peach preserves, and she stood in the doorway long enough to hear the shape of it. "The offer's fair, Mr. Fisher. More than fair, given the road project." "No, there is no road project," Eli said. "You said that Tuesday, and my cousin checked with the county. There's no filing." Something flickered across Preston's face. Small, gone fast, but Naomi had spent 4 years reading faces like that for a living. It was the look of a man who'd been caught in something he thought no one plain enough would check. "There will be," Preston said. "Eventually. Everything out here becomes something eventually. You can sell it on your terms now, or the state decides your terms later. My grandfather built this barn with his hands, and my father built a company with his," Preston said, sharper than he meant to, "and it didn't save him either. Sentiment doesn't hold land. Money does." Naomi's fingers tightened around the jar of preserves. "My father built a company with his hands, and it didn't save him." She thought of Arthur Whitfield's face in that glass conference room. Not this young man's face, the older one, gentler, already starting to grey before his time. A good man who trusted the wrong partner and paid for it with his name and eventually his heart. She thought of Dale Marsh's leather folio under his arm days ago in the diner. Still smooth, still standing, still telling people where to move and when. Some loops don't close because you walk away from them. They just wait. That night, Naomi sat at the kitchen table long after her sisters had gone to bed, an oil lamp burning low, the tin box open in front of her. Inside, a folded copy of an 11-page report. A photograph of her first day at the firm, hair down, blazer too big in the shoulders. A small brass key, the number 114 stamped into the metal, tied with a bit of red thread so she'd never lose it in a drawer. Safety deposit box, First Independence Bank, Center City, Philadelphia. She'd rented it the same week she quit, with the last of her paycheck, because some part of her, the part that didn't fully believe she'd ever really leave that world behind, refused to let the only copy of the truth sit in a box in her father's attic where a fire or a flood could erase it. She'd told herself for 8 years that she was done, that the truth she carried wasn't hers to fix, that it belonged to lawyers and judges and people who lived in that world, not this one. But Eli's barn wasn't going anywhere near that world. And Dale Marsh, smooth, standing, still winning, had just walked back into her life, wearing a different client's money. She closed the tin box. She didn't sleep much. The next morning, she wore her apron like any other day and carried the key in her dress pocket like it weighed more than it did. Preston came in at 8, Marsh beside him this time, papers ready for Eli to sign at 9. They took the corner booth. Naomi poured their coffee without a word, same as always. Then she reached into her pocket and set the key on the counter right in front of Preston's folder. That was the moment. The one that would replay first, before anyone understood a single thing about why. "Where did you get that?" Preston said. "You'll want to sit back down, Mr. Whitfield. This is going to take a minute." Marsh's laugh came out thin. "Preston, what is this?" "My name," Naomi said, "used to be Naomi King. I worked for your father for 3 years, Mr. Whitfield. I was the analyst who found the $14 million gap in the client trust accounts in 2018. The diner had gone quiet around them, not all at once, but table by table, the way a room does when it senses something real happening in the middle of an ordinary morning." Marsh's face didn't move much. That was the tell. A man with nothing to hide reacts. A man with everything to hide holds very still. "That matter was closed," Marsh said. "Reviewed by compliance. Nothing came of it." "Nothing came of it," Naomi said, "because you made sure of it. I wrote an 11-page report tracing every transfer back to an account under your wife's maiden name, Mr. Marsh. I handed it to compliance myself. It never left the building." She looked at Preston. "Your father resigned, believing it was his failure. It wasn't. He trusted the wrong partner for 30 years, and this man let him take the fall for it rather than lose everything himself." Preston's jaw worked, no sound coming out for a moment. "My father had a heart attack. He never got to key 114, Naomi said. "First Independence Bank, Philadelphia. My statement, the original report, and copies of 4 wire confirmations Mr. Marsh's own assistant signed off on. I kept it because I couldn't prove it then. I can now." "This is absurd," Marsh said, standing, reaching for his folio like it might shield him. "A waitress with a conspiracy story." "A forensic accountant," Naomi corrected, quiet but not soft. "With a chartered license she never gave up, and 8 years of patience she didn't know she'd need." She slid the key an inch closer to Preston. "I don't want your land deal, Mr. Whitfield. I don't want anything from you at all. But your father spent his last year alive believing he ruined the company his own hands built. He didn't. I think you should be the one who tells him that, even if it's too late for him to hear it." Preston picked up the key like it was hot. He looked at Marsh for a long moment, the man who'd sat at his family's table every Thanksgiving for 15 years, who'd spoken at his father's funeral, who'd told Preston more than once that he'd carry the company forward the way Arthur would have wanted. "Sit down, Dale," Preston said. His voice had changed. "We're going to the bank." What happened after that, Naomi mostly heard second-hand, the way news travels through a farming community. Slow, then all at once, carried by people who'd been in the diner that morning and couldn't stop talking about it. Dale Marsh didn't come back to bird in hand. His lawyer did twice, first with threats, then, once the bank records were pulled and matched against 8-year-old wire confirmations, with a much quieter offer to settle before it reached a courtroom. Naomi never signed anything. She didn't need to. The truth, once it was let out of a safety deposit box, didn't need her permission to keep moving. The land deal changed too. Preston Whitfield came back to the Ridge Road himself, without Marsh, without a folder full of pressure. He sat at Eli's kitchen table and offered a number that didn't need a threat behind it. And when Eli said he'd think on it, Preston said that was fine. Take the time. No rush this time. He came to the diner once more before he left the county for good. Naomi was behind the counter, same apron, same rhythm. I cleared his name, Preston said. Filed the correction with the SEC myself. It'll be in the record by next month. My father's obituary will finally say what actually happened. He set an envelope on the counter, thick, the kind of thick that meant money. This isn't enough, but it's something. Naomi didn't touch it. Give it to the Historical Society that keeps the old company's record straight if you want it to matter. I don't need it. You could have stayed quiet. Sold the deal your uncle's way and let us buy the Ridge and never said a word about any of it. I could have, she agreed. But I didn't leave that world because I stopped caring about the truth, Mr. Whitfield. I left because it stopped mattering there. She refilled a coffee 2 stools down without being asked. It still matters here. He left the envelope anyway. She gave it to the Deacon's Fund the following Sunday and never spoke of it again. There was no article, no interview, no camera crew from Philadelphia, though 2 different reporters called the diner asking for the Amish forensic accountant before Ruth learned to say wrong number and hang up without missing a step. Naomi didn't want any of it. Not because she was ashamed of what she'd done, but because it wasn't the reason she'd done it. A name cleared 8 years too late for the man who needed to hear it. That was the whole of it. Anything past that belonged to somebody else's story, not hers. The evening after Preston left for good, she took the long way home, letting the horse walk slow along the Ridge Road as the light went gold over Eli's walnut trees. Gravel under the wheels, steady and familiar. Wood smoke somewhere down the valley, and under it, hay and cut grass, and the particular stillness of a county that didn't need anyone's permission to keep going the way it always had. Her father was at the gate when she came up the lane, not because anyone had told him she was coming, but because he always seemed to know. Eli says the young Whitfield fellow signed a fair price today, he said. He did. You never told me you still had that key. I know. He didn't ask her to explain further, and she didn't offer to. That was its own kind of language, the not asking. He took the horse's bridle so she could climb down, and for a moment neither of them said anything at all. Supper's near ready, he said finally. Your sister's made the peach cobbler. She followed him up toward the house, past the barn, past the lamp already lit in the kitchen window, and did not once look back down the Ridge Road toward the world she used to belong to. She hadn't gone back to that world because it called her. She'd only reached into it long enough to hand a dying man's son the one thing he was owed, and then she'd let it go again, on purpose, the same way she'd let it go the first time. Some people spend a lifetime choosing between who they were and who they've become. Naomi had learned the hard way that she didn't have to choose at all. She could carry both. The sharp mind that once traced $14 million through a maze of false accounts, and the calm hands that poured coffee every morning at 5:30, and let each one serve the other when it mattered. The truth doesn't ask what you're wearing when you tell it. It only asks whether you will, inspired by real acts of quiet courage.